Hello, and welcome back to Bounceability, a 5-module resilience journey. And today is webinar 3, and it's about values and goals as a compass for maintaining resilience. And it's a really important one today because values really provide you with the direction and a meaningful reason for continuing on when you're going through challenges, particularly over this time at work and the challenges that many people are facing in different sectors. In the aged care sector, or if you work in another sector, there are always challenges in every workplace. And today is about your values and goals, and also around how you um, don't overcommit yourself and how you make sure that you don't overload yourself. So let's get started. I'm going to start by talking about values. So values are usually fairly stable, but they don't have strict limits or boundaries. So they pretty much stay the same throughout your life. But as you move through your life, your values may change a little bit. For example, in your early years when you're focusing on your career or making more money, or you're trying to build some success in your life, your values might be more measured by how much money you're making or the status that you have or um, or around what kind of work you're doing. Those might be top priority. But after you have a family or your work-life balance changes, your values, what you value changes. And time with your family might be something that you value more than building your career or increasing your status. As your definition of success changes, so do your personal values. This is why we need to keep in touch with your values, and it's a lifelong exercise. It's not something that you do only for a little while, and once you know what your values are, you can forget about them. You should continuously revisit your values, and especially if you start to feel unbalanced and you can't quite figure out why. If your resilience is low, it might mean that you need to look at what your values are and if you're living according to those values. We cultivate values in lots of ways through religion or our spirituality, through our upbringing, through our experiences through life, at work, or our hobbies, or our education. And finding something that we hold on to when the storms are surrounding us is what values is about. It's having that thing that is driving you, and it's the thing that's super important to you could be the thing that grounds you when things are really difficult. And this is important because when you know why you're doing something and why it is very important to you, it actually can motivate you to keep going when things get very difficult. And a good way to illustrate this is to talk to you about somebody named Viktor Frankl. And he wrote a wonderful book called Man's Search for Meaning. And in that book, he talks about his experiences in concentration camps during World War II in Germany. And he was a doctor. And while he was in the concentration camp, he was tasked with looking after other people in the concentration camp who were ill. Now, you can imagine that was very difficult because he didn't have any resources, medicines, equipment, but he cared for the people in the concentration camp as much as he could. And those people really appreciated him. And in the book, he talks about how he found a way that he could escape. And he didn't tell anyone, but his patients started realizing that there was something going on. And one of them one day said to him, "Thank you so much for doing everything that you can, and we wish you the best of luck. And you've been so good to us, and we just hope that you get out and that you're fine." And he says in that moment, he realized that he couldn't escape because he was doing such meaningful work in that concentration camp. And he decided to stay. And from that moment, the difficulty of the concentration camp meant nothing because he had so much meaning in looking after the other people who were in that concentration camp with him. And he said, it does not matter what we expect from life, but rather what life expects from us. And it's about bringing meaning to your life. And that's what knowing your values can do for you. It's knowing and understanding what is most meaningful to you so that when you are focused on doing something and it's meaningful to you, you can struggle through it and you can be resilient because it is meaningful. It's not as easy as it sounds. You have to put some work into discovering what it is that's meaningful to you. And there's a great tool that I'm going to teach you now called the Life Compass. And it will help you find out what's most meaningful to you and help you set goals and activities that will keep you focused on the things that are most meaningful to you so that you can help your resilience and maintain your resilience through challenging times. This is what the Life Compass tool worksheet looks like. And you can see there are different areas on the worksheet that are things that you participate in your life. So things like your personal growth, or you could call that education for yourself, your health, your family, your partner or other relationships, your work, your leisure time or your time off from work, your spirituality. Some people would say religion, but it could be spirituality for you, your community, and social time. And all of those are different areas that hopefully you engage in and that you practice different activities in. And I'll talk to you about how to complete that worksheet in a second. But the first thing I'd like you to do is to think about, what do you want to be remembered for when you are no longer here and uh, people are thinking about you and your life. What is it that you want to be remembered for? I know for me personally, I don't want to be remembered for being somebody who works 12 hours a day. I'd like to be remembered for being somebody who was adventurous and who gave generously to her family and her friends and who was kind and who was knowledgeable and shared her wisdom. Those are the things I'd like to be remembered for, not that I worked long hours and that I had lots of money. So think about what you'd like to be remembered for. And once you've taken some time to really think about what it is that you want to be remembered for, and you've written some notes, and you've just, spend a couple of days on it even, then you'd come back to this worksheet, and you will see on this worksheet, there's those squares, and in each square or area of your life, there's a pink square and a black square. And this is where you're going to put some numbers in it, and I'll explain it to you on the next slide. So step one, what do you want to be remembered for? Step two, in the top square in each box, you rank from 1 to 10 how important this area of your life is to you. You can rank different areas the same. So for example, personal growth or education in my life is very, very important to me. I love continuing my personal growth. I love education, and I like to increase my wisdom and my knowledge so that I can share that with the people that I do workshops with. So I would rank that an 8 in my life in terms of personal growth. It's very important to me. In step three, in the bottom square in each box, you rank from 1 to 10 how well you are focusing on this area in your life. So personal growth is an 8 for me in terms of importance, and I would say I do really well. I make sure that every year I'm studying something, or I'm attending workshops, and I make sure that I improve my knowledge every year. So I would say that I am probably doing a 9 in how well I'm focusing in this area. And then step four in that box for, so again, if we're talking about personal growth, we list the goals you want to achieve in that area so that you can increase the number in the bottom square closer to how important it is for you. So if I've said that the top square, personal growth is an 8 for me in importance, and I'm achieving 9 in that, I would say that I don't need to really, add more goals to increase that number because I'm doing really, really well in that area. But for example, in another area, so for example, in my social time, social time is probably a 10 in importance to me. I need to see friends and I need to be around my family, but sometimes I'm only achieving a 6 in that area. That's how well I'm contributing to. So the goals in that box, I would need to set some goals to help increase my social time so that if it's important as 10, then I'm also increasing the focus that I've got in that area to a 9 or a 10 so that they match more easily. So you would do this for each box, for each area in your life. And then you would make sure that you're not setting too many goals in all the areas so they can't all be equally important, because then you'll have too many goals and you'll be too overloaded. So then you'll need to go back and do overload management. which is asking yourself these two questions. What are the expectations and obligations for each of those areas in my life? And what can I stop doing? What can I let go of? Um, and this is where you really start to see how much you've got on your plate, and also the areas in your life that you're neglecting to take on other things that maybe aren't as important to you. So you need to ask, are the goals in each of those areas, are the things that I'm focusing on contributing to what I want to be remembered for? Multitasking is not the answer to high demands and high stress. And you need to be able to create an island in the stream. So you need to create this peaceful area for you. And we should and can use our higher capabilities to create solutions, such as building in focus time for critical tasks and finding ways to retreat to quiet space or to silence, and to silence our phones and devices to support our work so that we can focus properly, instead of being multitasking and creating more and more work for ourselves and doing lots of things at once. So, here it's about making sure that you're not taking on too many things to try and, do stuff, but it only adds more stress. Again, I'll remind you about this graph that I've shown now in both of the two previous webinars, and it's around making sure that we stay in that growth edge, the stretch outside of our comfort zone, but not so challenging that we feel overwhelmed and that we start to collapse. Because that's when we start to feel overload. So there is such a thing as functional overload, where we have too much to do, but it still feels manageable. And it's like spinning plates. You'll see the man in this diagram is spinning lots of plates. I don't know if you've seen that in circus performances or, theater performances, but spinning plates is where they're spinning these plates on poles and then add more and more plates, and it looks very impressive. And you can spin lots of plates and it doesn't feel harmful, but as long as you're not stretching too far or continuing it for too long, because you can imagine it gets very tiring to continue to spin all of those plates. And as I've mentioned before in previous webinars, resilience training is really about strengthening our ability to deal with experiences that take us over that edge. So resilience training is about bringing us back to that orange zone. So when we get in that red zone or we take on too many plates, we're able to bring ourselves back into that orange zone so that we can keep going. A key insight for you today is that when you are in overload, more is less and less is more. So there's no point on taking on more plates and spinning more and more plates, because less is more. Doing less is more beneficial to you than adding on lots more work to try get through it. And I'll remind you about this over the hill. We talk about the over the hill and the top of the hill. When you're underloaded and there's not enough to do, you might feel bored. And then you get to the top of the hill and that's your best performance. But then when you're overloaded, it's reduced creativity, accident prone, you're depressed, you're exhausted, you're aggressive. It's not a good place to be. And there's also the, spinning plates analogy again. When you're at the bottom of the hill, there's a sustainable pace. It's really easy to, spin those plates. Then you get to the top of the hill, there's enough going on and you've got enough plates and you can manage it all, but it's busy. If you start to take on more plates, you get the warning signs. The plates are wobbling. And then you get symptoms of things are going badly. You start to drop plates. So think about it as you start to forget things, or you aren't able to complete tasks, or you start to, especially at work, you start to fall behind on deadlines. And then eventually, the more and more this happens, the more you break down, and it's just exhaustion. It's really, really bad for you to take on too many plates, which is why the Life Compass allows you to focus on what's most important and what those goals are without taking too many on. They have to contribute to how you want to be remembered, and that they are meaningful to your values and they mean something to you. So that doze zone, we want to stay away from it. That's, no plates are spinning at all. And then you've got that sustainable pace at the top of the hill. That's where you want to be. And that's what the Life Compass does. It teaches you what the sustainable pace is and what's most important and meaningful to you, because that's when it's exciting and it feels good and you can keep going. And it also allows you, when things are a little bit more challenging, to still feel like it's meaningful and like it's worth doing. The top of the hill, it's that challenging place, but it's still very doable. But it starts to creep into this area where there's warning signs. The plates are wobbling, you're going to drop one, you're not quite missing deadlines, but they're going to happen. And then symptoms are crash, plate starts falling. That's when you're in overload. That's when you're feeling confused, depressed, exhausted. And then finally, breakdown. And that's where we need extra help to support us through those difficult times. So the key here is resilience training is helping you to keep that sustainable pace. And we talked about, remaining social and your attitude towards things in the first two webinars. But today, the values and knowing what's meaningful to you is what's going to help you maintain your resilience through challenging times. So this is an interesting thing for you to consider too. And it's, how many emails are sent in a day? And all of us would probably use email today for work. Um, and in 2003, only 30 billion emails were sent per day. But now, well, 2019, I didn't have figures for, 2023, 246 billion. I can only imagine it's even more now. And that just goes to show how overloaded we are with information every day and how important it is to manage your overload and manage what you're taking on. So many people take on new hobbies, new activities, lots of things that might not even be that important. They just get emails and emails and emails and messages all the time about them. And it makes it really difficult to maintain your stress levels and maintain your ability to stay focused. So emails are a huge. And that brings me nicely to this activity. And it's something that you can do to help you determine when you're starting to get those warning signs of the plates wobbling and they're starting to fall. And it's a good exercise because when you can see the warning signs and you know what the symptoms are, you can start using the resilience training that we've done in the last few webinars to bring yourself back to that top of the hill feeling. So the first thing you're going to do is when I'm stressed, I tend to feel what? So I know when I'm stressed, I feel frustrated. I get more frustrated with people very easily. I start to feel tired and I start to feel emotional. So the warning signs for me is I start to get irritable with people, and the symptoms are I snap. So I might snap at somebody. I might get very short with them. If they do something, I might get irritated and I'm short with them. So I know when I start doing that, it's a warning sign that I'm feeling stressed and that I need to do some of my resilience training and bring myself back to that top of the hill feeling. And I would do that for each of those areas. What do I start thinking? How does my body feel? What does my body do? What is my behavior? How do my relationships react? So you will do that for each of those areas. What are the warning signs and what are the symptoms? And you'll actually be surprised at how much you know about yourself that tells you you're starting to feel stressed, but that you never use. And what this will do is if you know what your warning signs and symptoms are, it will allow you to bring yourself back to that top of the hill by using your resilience training and your tools and techniques that I've shared with you to bring you back to those to that feeling of not stressed. So when in overload, saying yes involves saying no. So saying yes to yourself involves saying no, and saying no is part of saying yes. And I mean by saying yes to yourself, it means maintaining your resilience, maintaining your happiness, and not allowing yourself to get into that major stress zone that you start to feel overwhelmed and overloaded. So saying no is part of saying yes. When you've done that worksheet, you know what the warning signs are. And if you know what the warning signs are, you need to take a renewal pause or you need to take a period of rest, go on holiday, and you need to do some training, like interval training. I've written there interval training. And what I mean by that is you train yourself to maintain that perfect optimum level of overload so that you're never going into those warning signs. So it's about making sure that you know when you've hit those warning signs, you're doing the things that help you take a rest and give your brain a rest and get you back to that best performance so that you're not sliding down the hill into major overload. So here's where we can go back to that life compass, and we need to do some commitment cropping. So if you are a person right now who feels overloaded and stressed and is over the hill, you're not at the top of the hill part, but you're over the hill, you can look at the different roles that you have, work and personally, like on your life compass. And remember, I said in that step 6, list the expectations and obligations that go with each one. What do you feel is expected of you? And what are the obligations that you have for each of those areas? And then think about how it feels to look at your list. It might be a very long list, and you might decide, wow, like there's a lot here. There's a lot for me to take on. And if you use the less is more principle, what can you resign from? What can you let go of? What can you stop doing? And especially if you look at that life compass and you've listed something as very low in importance. So the top square, you've given it a 4 or a 5, and the bottom square, you've said that you're doing 10 and you're very committed to it, but it's not that important to you. Maybe you need to start looking at letting go of things in those areas that are taking up your time, because those areas, if they're not important to you, it's not meaningful, and you're putting all of your time and effort into that area and you're neglecting another area. Let's say you've said that it's 10 in importance, but you're only committing 2 to it. And if it's 10 in importance and you're not doing anything in that area, it means that you're neglecting the meaningful things, the things that you value most. And that can contribute to you feeling overtired, overloaded, and contribute to your resilience, your water levels dropping, the water levels that I've talked about in previous webinars. So what will help you increase your resilience is doing more things in the areas that are meaningful to you and getting rid of things that are not important to you, are not valuable. The less is more principle. And this is what commitment cropping is. It's starting to get rid of those commitments and obligations that are not meaningful to you. And I'll give you an example in my life. For example, community work or volunteering is not highest on my priority list. My family comes higher in priority, my friends, my social circles, my health, um, my leisure time. Those are much more higher in priority to me. But I had one year where I was very committed in terms of volunteering and doing community work, and I'd taken lots and lots on, and I was on multiple boards, and I was doing lots of work. And then I did my Life Compass tool. I actually do this Life Compass tool every year at the start of the year. Instead of doing uh, New Year's resolutions, I do the Life Compass. And I realized when I looked at my community work, it was a 6 in my in importance, but a 10 in how much I was focused on it. I knew that I had to let go of some of the work that I was doing, and I resigned from all of the boards that I was on. I decided that I wasn't going to, you know, work on those boards anymore. I let go of those expectations and obligations so that I could spend more time with family and in leisure time and doing health things, because those things are what generate my resilience. Exercise, being with people that mean a lot to me. So that's what you can do if you look at your Life Compass tool. It's a way for you to get rid of some of those commitments that are just weighing you down, and that you don't need in your life and that aren't meaningful. And then you will do something called a crisis drill. And this is where you will you will make a list of how you will respond if over the edge or pushed too far over that hill. So what are the strategies that you can use? So strategies that I use is I ask for help, I take a step back, I'm more assertive with saying no to people who want me to do more and more work for them. Especially, I've got lots of clients, and sometimes they keep sending me work, and sometimes I have to say no, I'm too busy and I can't do more. And I act on that. And then I remember my strengths, and the strengths that I have when I'm in a crisis. So, I have a good sense of humor. I'm quite pragmatic, and I'm quite practical in the things that I do. So those are my strengths. And what resources do I have? Where's my safe place? That's, being at home with my family is my safe place. And the insights that I have is that resilience is not extraordinary, and I know that I will get through it and things are not forever. If you remember in the previous webinar, we talked about storyboarding. You can use some of those things that we did in storyboarding to create a crisis drill. So when you are over the edge, you're no longer at the top of the hill, what are you going to do to help you come back to the top of the hill? So coming to the end of today's webinar, what are you going to do for yourself at work for the week? The first thing you're going to do is know when you're over the hill. What are the signs and symptoms? What are the things that you're feeling, thinking? How does your body feel? Do that worksheet. You're going to take renewal pauses. So you're going to stop when you start to feel overloaded, and you're going to pause and you take a few breaths. You might meditate, for example. You might go for a walk, and those pauses will renew you and help you feel refreshed. If you're going to do some commitment cropping, do the Life Compass tool, set your goals, make sure they all contribute to how you want to be remembered, and commit to getting rid of the things that you feel obligated to do that are not useful to you. And then you're going to create your crisis drill for your red zone moments, or your over the hill moments. What are you going to do? What are the strategies? What are the insights that you can use? You can use some of your uh, storyboard from the previous webinar to help you with this. And that way, when you're getting those symptoms that you're starting to get over the hill, you do your crisis drill and you make sure you get yourself back to that top of the hill moment. A couple of tips, very simple ones. Say no sometimes. You'll be amazed at how good you feel at saying no to things that aren't going to add more to your life. Less is more. And then silence alerts. We get so many emails in a day. Remember that slide I showed you with how many emails the world is getting? If you are constantly getting alerts on your phone to emails and messages, and they're all day and they stop you from being able to focus, you need to silence them and only come back to those emails when you have a quiet time to be able to focus on them, because checking them as you get those alerts are only going to increase your stress and anxiety because you feel like you're multitasking, and multitasking is not the answer. So that brings me to the end of today's webinar. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar, and go out and be like Viktor Frankl. Find the thing that is meaningful to you, because when you have meaning, resilience is easy. It comes to you because you know that you're doing something worthwhile, even when it's challenging. Good luck.